So, a few things have happened since your man Louie T has departed. JJ Watt out, Russell Wilson in, and of course, your man Louie T is back like cooked crack. So let's get to the proceedings this evening, shall we? Let's go! Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 139th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I am accompanied by my man, Ramon, right here in the front. All right. So before all of your jokes come, this is my guy right here. I can't let him go. I went to get my hair cut last week, and I said, hey, don't touch him, man. Leave Ramon alone. So anyway, got to tell you about my trip here in a second. But before I came on the pod, I heard some really somber news. Another death, man. And I've been talking about death a lot lately, and it never gets any easier to talk about death, and especially the kind that's unexpected. Death is never easy, even when you try to prepare for it, let alone when you don't see it coming. We talked about Marty Schottenheimer, and I said his demise was imminent. Well, he died last week. Not a surprise to any of us. That's why I went ahead and got ahead of that train, because I knew it was coming. I thought that the Washington Post took the low road, and I tweeted about that with their headline with his obituary. It just didn't make any sense. The guy's dead. Why are you taking shots at him? It doesn't make any sense. We all know he had struggles in the postseason. I talked about that on the show, but that's not how you lead off with a man's death. That said, we've talked about a number of people passing in 2021. Well, add Vincent Jackson, ex-Chargers and Buccaneers wide receiver, to that list. 38 years old was Vincent Jackson when he was found dead, apparently, in I think a hotel in Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. Just unfortunate, man. I don't know the details surrounding the situation. There's some sketchy things going on there. I mean, he checked into this hotel about a month ago, January 11th, I believe. His family was worried about his well-being. They decided to do a checkup on him. He was spotted. He was alive. He was well. And so they canceled the search. And then 2 days later, he's dead. Something doesn't seem right there. It seems a bit fishy. I don't know if he was going through some family issues. I mean, why is a guy like Vincent Jackson checked into a hotel for over a month? I don't know. I don't care at this point. It's just sad, is what it is. And so another guy, and we've been talking about all these reporters and all these guys that and women that have passed on way too soon. I saw Sekou Smith, I think a couple of weeks ago, passed. If you watch the NBA, if you watch NBA TV, you know how tuned in and plugged in Sekou Smith is to the NBA. He passed away. There was a guy, Therese Paylor of the Kansas City variety. He's a beat writer out there that he was one of the guys. I remember when Washington traded for Alex Smith, Therese Paylor was the first guy to have it. And I remember watching some of his stuff and listening to him and reading some of his writing. And he was just a really vibrant guy, full of life. He's gone now. And I think he was in his 30s, like 35, 36, 37, somewhere in that general vicinity. Just too early for people to be passing away. It's ridiculous. So that one kind of hit me hard, man. You know, Vincent Jackson was a guy that I grew up on, obviously. I told you my best friend, one of my best friends is a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. So obviously Vincent Jackson was one of his guys. And Vincent Jackson was in my Madden playing days. And so V-Jax was a beast. He was 6'5", he was 235, could go up and get the football, could run. I mean, he was one of those the first guys that you saw at that size that could truly run. And he was a problem on Madden. I just remember him being just a difference maker for those Buccaneers. when he finally went to Tampa. And I don't know if you guys remember this. He was one of the first guys that I remember really testing the limits of free agency and not wanting to play with an organization that he felt wasn't paying him what he thought he deserved. He sat out the first 11 games of the last year in Los Angeles with the Chargers, and he got that accrued season. And I remember saying, wow, nobody ever does that. Nobody ever actually tries that rule. Well, he did. He sat out the first 10, 11 games of that season, showed up, got his accrued season, played the final 5 or 6 games, whatever it was, and then he went on to Tampa. Had some fantastic years with the Buccaneers, and he was Phillip Rivers' first go-to guy. You know, we always talk about Antonio Gates and the music that they made together, and it was very beautiful music. But Vincent Jackson was the guy he would throw it up 50, 60 yards down the field to, and he would go up and get it. And there was this string of big, tall receivers that Phillip Rivers would just chuck it to down the field. He was the first, though. Vincent Jackson was the first. Michael Floyd came a little bit later, and a bunch of other guys that Rivers would just throw it up to. But Vincent Jackson was the first. And he was a hell of a football player. And by all accounts, I can't confirm nor deny this, but listening to everyone speak, even better guy off the field. So Vincent Jackson gone at the age of 38, and an investigation is pending. But it's just sad. Whatever happens, whether it's self-inflicted, foul play, whatever happened, it doesn't matter. It's just sad. It just is. That said, let's before we get into my gym dropping session and get into the pod today, I want to talk about my trip real quick. I told you I was going out of town, needed to get away, get out of the house. So we go to the cabins up in Tennessee, up in Pigeon Forge. Man, I'm not even a nature guy. I've told you guys this before, but you know, I guess as you get older, the little things start to matter more. You know, I don't know if this is just a byproduct of me getting old or something, because I could give two shits about nature and trees and the scenery and all that shit when I was growing up. But now all of a sudden, I'm driving down the road, and I think I told you guys this on the podcast about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. I was driving around the house, and I saw the trees, and it snowed outside, and I said, oh, how beautiful it was, just all the white outside. So we go to the cabins, and we're up in the mountains. And it is gorgeous. It's so serene. Now, I'm going to tell you, getting up to the damn cabin was an adventure onto itself. I mean, we're driving up these winding roads with no light, and it's just enough space. I'm like, who in the hell built these roads? They ought to be slapped, because they literally, it's like they measured out the exact amount of space for 2 cars to barely squeeze by. I'm like, who does this? Make it bigger so 2 cars can comfortably pass each other in the night. But anyway, we get to what is the cabin that we're staying at, and it is just this ridiculous incline. And we're like, how the hell are we getting up there? And obviously we made it, but it was a chore. And you know, you unpack and you just kind of take in the scenery, and you look around and you're like, wow. And I go out on the deck that next morning, because we got there at night, so it was dark. And you get there and you kind of just look out. You go outside on the deck, and we're overlooking the mountains and into the forest, and all you hear is air. You know? And then we went down by the creek. Yeah, it's a creek. There was a creek there, right? Hear me talking about a damn creek like I'm 57 years old. And I'm just listening to the creek, and it's so peaceful. And I'm like, man, this is awesome. We really enjoyed ourselves. Wish it was longer. We got to go back at some point. But if you haven't been to a cabin, if you haven't been in the woods, you should try it. It's my second time going off into the wilderness. I've been to the Poconos before as well. That was pretty cool. But this was awesome. You know, I was a lot younger then, so I didn't really kind of take in the environment, the scenery. I kind of took it for granted, like, yeah, I'll come do this again. Never really been since. So this is the first time, and it was awesome. That said, all right, enough of that. Let's get to my gym dropping session, shall we? Absolutely. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, you know what was crazy when I was on my trip? JJ Watt gets released. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And, Russell Wilson was on the Dan Patrick show. And he said some stuff. And I'm like, no big deal, right? Wrong, I guess. Everyone's talking about how Russ wants out and he's not happy. And I'm like, I didn't gather that from what he just said. Where are you getting this from? But you know what it got me to thinking? It's to a much larger point. And we're going to talk about Russell Wilson here in a second. But it got me to a much larger point. And it took me back to 1992 in the movie theaters watching the movie Juice. And I know I was 6. I should not have been in that movie theater. Gotta love my aunt. Anyway, I remember at the end of that movie, after Q finally gets rid of Bishop, and some rando turns to Q and says, hey, you got the juice now. And I said, man, you know what? These quarterbacks in the league, they got the juice now. They got the juice and the squeeze. I'm looking around and I'm saying, at just moments notice, if they decide, don't want to play for this team anymore, they got the power to be able to say, I don't want to play here anymore. And at that point, what is the team really going to do? Now, we got 3 quarterbacks, 3 totally different situations, all more likely than not gonna... No. I take that back. Russell Wilson's not going anywhere. I still contend that Deshaun Watson isn't going anywhere. But if he decides, I'm really not playing for the Texans ever again, what are they going to do? Play hardball? Are they really going to are they really going to play this game of chicken? I mean, because technically they could, and they could win. But what does that do? Like, if a guy doesn't want to be there, do you really want to hold him against his will? Do you really want to take a guy and hold him hostage, knowing that he doesn't want to be there? Nobody wants to do that. So if Deshaun really decides, nope, not changing my mind, don't ever want to don the Texans uniform again, get me out of here, what do? You're going to have to trade him. Russ isn't going anywhere. We'll talk about that quickly in a second. But Russell Wilson made what I thought was some innocent comments, pretty much saying, hey, I watched the Super Bowl just like everybody else. I saw Tom Brady, who just switched teams this past offseason, win a Super Bowl, surrounded by talent that he helped bring to Tampa. He helped bring Antonio Brown. Remember, Russell Wilson wanted Antonio Brown in Seattle. They didn't do it. They go out and they get Rob Gronkowski. That was a Tom Brady signing, essentially. Okay? They went out specifically because of Tom Brady. They went out and they drafted Tristan Wirfs. Don't think for one second Tom Brady didn't have any impact on what they did. They traded up one spot just to ensure that they got Tristan Wirfs at 13 last year. Don't think for one second Tom Brady didn't have anything to do with that. When he signed there, he said, y'all gonna have to protect me now. I don't move around, I don't run, I don't leave the pocket. Y'all gotta protect me. They said, hey, we got you, don't worry. No worries. And Russ sees that and he says, I watched the Super Bowl like everybody else. And the difference in the game was one quarterback was running for his life and the other one was hardly touched the entire night. He's not wrong. And he's saying, well, shit, why can't I have that? And I think we might have talked about this on the podcast already. Why can't I have that? Why do I have to run for my life? Why have I been sacked 394 times? And Dan Patrick made sure he brought that 394 number up at least 5 times in a 3-minute span. And to which Russ acknowledges, yeah, some of that's on me. You know, I like to run around, create and extend, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But there are other times where he didn't have a chance. He didn't have a chance. The ball snapped, and he's running for his life like Mahomes was on Super Bowl Sunday a week or two ago. So, again, we get it. We understand how this thing works. But he didn't say, I want out of Seattle. Dan pressed him about, wanting more help on the team and having a little bit more say in personnel decisions. Guys that they bring in as free agents. Having a little bit more to do with the guys that he feels like are going to be in the locker room, in the huddle with him. If you're a veteran, and he brought up names like LeBron. He said, LeBron, basketball is a different sport. There's only 15 guys on an NBA roster. It's a little different. You can kind of control what the hell goes on in the NBA when there's only 15 guys. It's different when it's 53 of you in an NFL locker room. However, when you're a veteran, like a Tom Brady, like a Russell Wilson, like an Aaron Rodgers, one of these guys, they're made men in this league. They've put in the work. We acknowledge that they're one of the best in the business. And you're playing the quarterback position? Maybe you should get a little say-so. You are the face of the franchise. It is your legacy. Maybe. I don't really feel like those guys should be involved in like coaching decisions, even though I will admit, if this guy's going to be my head coach, he's going to be working intimately with me and the other 52 guys in the locker room. But forget about the other 52. Me in particular as the quarterback, who I'm tied to this organization probably for the rest of my career, I'd really like to know that I'm going to get along really well with the guy that you're bringing in. So maybe coach, but I don't think they should have any input in decisions about the GM. We've talked about this already. That said, Russ didn't ask for his ticket out of Seattle. That's not what I gathered from that. But just the mere fact that he questioned the Seahawks as to the guys that they're bringing in and how good of a job they've done in protecting him to this point of his career, which they haven't done a great job, and we've talked about this ad nauseum for years. The fact that he just simply questioned and said, hey, maybe I should have a little bit more say-so. I would like to. Everyone's speculating he wants out of Seattle. I didn't gather that from watching that 4-minute interview with him and Dan Patrick. I didn't get that from that little snippet. And I don't see how anybody else got that. Russ wasn't asking for out of Seattle. But just that little bit of frustration. And he wasn't upset. The tone of that wasn't negative. It was matter of fact, like, yeah, I would like more input. I'd like more. And Dan pressed him for it. It's not like he just went there and offered it up. Dan kept pressing, pricking, and prodding, and probing. He said, look, you didn't answer my question. That was a long answer. You didn't answer my question. Would you like some more control over free agency and some of the guys that they sign and bring in? And Russ said, yeah, I would. I play with some of these guys. We know who's good and who isn't. Play with some of these guys at the Pro Bowl. I'm in the huddle with them. I want guys that love ball. And you don't always know, and I don't think they always get it right with these guys that either love ball or don't. But you can tell when you've been around a guy if they love ball or not. And I want those guys in the huddle. So, again, I said all of that to go back to my original point, that these QBs, they got the juice. Because Russ didn't ask for a trade, yet everybody in the league is calling like, hey, man, heard Russ was a little disgruntled. Y'all looking to move him? And the Seahawks are like, hell no. Stop calling my phone. They're hanging up on everybody. Stop calling us. We're not trading Russell Wilson. And they're not going to, and they shouldn't trade him. They should. If they want to go back to the days of Tavares Jackson, they'll trade Russell Wilson. Okay. You want to go back to when you signed Matt Flynn, hoping he was the answer? Trade Russell Wilson. They don't want to go back there. Just like the Cowboys don't want to go back to when they were searching for a replacement for Troy Aikman. They don't want to go back to the Quincy Carter days, the Chad Hutchinson days. All right, the Drew Henson days, the Vinny Testaverde, Drew Bledsoe days. They don't want to go back there. It's not pretty. If you can avoid the quarterback wilderness, do it. Seahawks aren't going to venture into that wilderness. The only reason they don't stink every year is because of number 3. They know it, you know it, I know it. No way he's getting traded. But he didn't ask for it. But because he is who he is, he's a quarterback, he's got all the juice. Dak's got all the juice in Dallas. Deshaun Watson's got all the juice in Houston. Texans could talk about not wanting to trade him all they want. But if that man says, I'm not playing another down for you, and you can find me all you want, I'm not coming back. At some point, the Texans got to go, okay, he's got us by the balls. And I still don't think they're going to trade him. I still think that they're going to be able to talk him into coming back because I know he wants better. He wants better, and he wants it in Houston, believe it or not. But after you feel like you've been betrayed so many times, you're like, okay, I want to do this somewhere else. And now that J.J. Watt is officially gone, there's not much to believe in if you're Deshaun Watson in Houston. Like, the defense was terrible last year. What's stopping the defense from being even worse this year now that J.J. Watt's no longer on board? You don't have any cap space. You don't have any draft capital early in the draft. What's going to change? In Deshaun's mind, probably nothing. We were 4-12 last year with a defense that was incapable of stopping anybody. You take J.J. Watt off of the defense, how in the hell are we going to stop anybody this year? Again, don't ask me. I don't know. So I think he wants out because of the fact that this team just isn't good, and I've been lied to too many times. Don't like the direction that this team is going in. Don't like the way they treat social injustice. I don't care for Jack Easterby, and you keep giving him promotions within the organization. The Texans got guys that have been within the organization for over 2 decades walking away. Like Jamie Roots, who was the team president for damn near 2 decades, says, you know what? Enough of this shit. I'm out of here. It's a mess in Houston right now. And I don't think Watson wants to be a part of this. He's got the juice. Carson Wentz said, I'm not a backup in this league. If I can't start, I don't want to be here. Eagles are like, all right, we'll ship you out. Don't worry about it. You just sit tight. We'll find a suitor for you, and we'll get you out of here as soon as possible. Carson Wentz got the juice. Matthew Stafford says, hey, look, man. Y'all took my coordinator away from me again. If y'all would have kept my man, Darren Bevel, I'd stay there. But you got rid of Darren Bevel. Too many funny lookings around here. I'm out. Get me out of here. You got the juice. He's gone. Quarterback's got the juice now, man. You really got to do everything in your power to keep your star guy happy. Or he can say, I don't want to do this no more. Get me out of here. And what are you really going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? The CBA that was put together by the owners, they thought they were curtailing this kind of behavior. Where a guy like Le'Veon Bell, and again, Le'Veon was a very unique situation because he was on a franchise tag, not on a deal, and didn't have to do anything. Just like Dak Prescott. The Cowboys could slap the franchise tag on him. He could not sign it. Doesn't have to do anything. But they're trying to curtail guys saying, you know what, I'm under contract, but I don't want to do this. With the way they've set up the CBA. And I think at any other position other than quarterback, I think it works. You know, if a receiver decides he doesn't want to play, all right, sit your ass down, take these fines. And if you don't want to play, then sit down. Keep accumulating these fines. And we'll see what happens. We'll see how long you're able to stay strong. Running back decides to do it. Go ahead, sit down. We got 3-4 more of those dudes on the roster. They may not be as good as you are, but we'll live. Left tackle. It'll sting if your left tackle decides he doesn't want to play ball. But you'll insert another guy and you'll keep the party going. Right tackle, guard, center, same deal. star pass rusher. Man, that shit hurts. It changes the entire identity of your defense. But guess what? We got 3 more pass rushers on the team. Well, next guy up. The only position you can't do that at is quarterback. Because in this league, when your starting quarterback goes down, if he's of any merit, now if you got a bottom of the barrel starting quarterback, you got one of these back end of the league starting caliber quarterbacks, you'll survive. Because he wasn't going to make your team, he wasn't going to make your team thrive anyway. So it didn't matter. But if you got one of these upper echelon dudes and he threatens to not play and you got to go to the next guy, that's a significant drop off, one that you can't overcome. You know the rules to the game in this league, then play. You got a quarterback, you got a chance. You don't have an above average quarterback, you got no chance in this league. So, it's just funny to see how much power now these quarterbacks have. I remember 5-7 years ago, this was unheard of for guys to demand out. I mean, we're seeing it all over the place now. Stephon Diggs strong-armed his way out of Minnesota. Jamal Adams did the same thing with the Jets. It's not just quarterbacks. We've talked about this on the podcast. But now with the new CBA, it's even more so with these quarterbacks. Russ doesn't want out of Seattle, just to reiterate again. But the fact that he could just say what he said and all of this attention comes to the Seattle Seahawks way and the phone is ringing off the hook, just off of the fact that he said, yeah, I could have a little bit more input. They could protect me a little bit better. All of a sudden now, he's unhappy and frustrated with the Seahawks. He wants out. Crazy. Anyway, I digress. In case you missed it, next up on the docket, a few things happened while I was away. So I just want to run through these quickly. Nothing major. Next week, we will dive deep into free agency. I mean, every single episode will be centered around free agency as we really start to gear up for free agency. I know a lot of people like to skip right to the draft in April, but there is free agency in March. The new league year will begin and free agency will open its doors and teams will come rushing in and filling their carts with items that they believe can help them win. And so I do want to take a look at free agency on this podcast, and we will start to do that next week. However, I do want to talk about some different things that have transpired over the last week or so. In case you missed it, Seahawks and Colts interested in Zach Ertz. Now, the Seahawks are always interested in a veteran tight end. Always. They had Greg Olsen last year, and they're looking at Zach Ertz this year. And, you know, that makes a ton of sense. He'd be a massive upgrade. He'd be the best. Remember, they went after Jimmy Graham once upon a time as well. He'd be the best tight end they've had in Seattle since Jimmy Graham. And even, I don't think Jimmy was what they thought they were getting when they got him. I think there might have been 1, maybe 2 years of some elite Jimmy in Seattle, but he was never at the point that he was in New Orleans. I don't think they ever got that Jimmy. But that said, their offense works a lot better when they've got a really good tight end in Seattle, especially with a guy like Russell Wilson that can extend, a guy like Ertz that can get open and win. It'd be really interesting to see him in that offense. But the Colts is what's really intriguing here. Remember last week, I sat here on a Monday and I said, well, looks like Carson Wentz going to get dealt. And I threw him in on the double O's that I had last week. Well, I thought that he was going to be traded last week at some point. I was expecting, while I was on the trip, to hear Carson Wentz dealt to such and such for such and such compensation and say, okay, when I get back, I'll have to do another video on that. It didn't happen. I was shocked. And the reason it didn't happen is because of what I talked about. Like the Eagles really thought, and I don't think they're getting anywhere near what they were hoping to get. Remember, we talked about a Stafford type package that they were hoping to rope somebody into. I said, especially if you're talking about the Indianapolis Colts and GM Chris Ballard, I said, he's one of the best in the business. They will not bamboozle Chris Ballard. I can assure you of that. He may give up some stuff. He ain't giving up 2 ones. And I said, I'm not even sure if he's willing to part ways with a 1 in general. Maybe he is. But here is how it's going to be done. So the Colts have reportedly offered 2 twos for Carson Wentz, which the Eagles are like, nah, that ain't. To me, that should be the asking price for him after the season he turned in last year and the contract that he has. Knowing that the Eagles are desperate to move him, there are a lot of factors here that don't support the Eagles netting a first-round pick for Carson Wentz. If you don't want to pay, then keep him. Keep him. He'll be, disgruntled and he wants out, and you got a brand new coach who might be in over his head. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Keep him then and turn it into a sideshow over there. You don't want that. So you're backed up in a corner. You got a guy that his trade value isn't but so high because of the season that he had. He was benched last year for a second-round pick. You don't have a ton of leverage here. Nobody cares about Wentz's 2019 or 2018 stats. It's a Janet Jackson league, as I've told you 1 trillion times. What have you done for me lately? Do, 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 do. Ooh, yeah. And as of late, Carson Wentz ain't done shit. So the Colts don't want to hear about what he did in 2019 with Greg Ward and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and guys like that. They don't want to hear that shit. What did he do in 2020? Not a damn thing, but get benched. So 2-2 sounds good to me, but the Eagles are like, hey, hold on. How about I throw in Zach Ertz? Is that good enough to get you a 1? Huh? Come on. So now it makes a ton of sense that the Colts are all of a sudden interested in Zach Ertz. I'm looking at their tight ends and I'm like, hey, y'all are perfectly fine at tight end. Re-sign Mo Alley Cox and Trey Burton, and it's not going to cost you a lot to do that. Just come back with the same 3 cats you had last year. Mo Alley Cox, Trey Burton, and Jack Doyle. I'm like, those dudes get it done. Why you need Zach Ertz? But it makes sense. Burton is a free agent. Mo Alley Cox is a free agent. I think he's an exclusive rights free agent, though. So if they really want Mo Alley Cox back, they will have him back. They got every opportunity and crack at bringing him back if they really want him back. So I'm like, well, you really don't need Zach Ertz. But they're like, hey, if I got to give up a 1 to get Zach Ertz or Carson Wentz, I might as well get Zach Ertz in the deal too. So that kind of makes sense that the Colts are interested in Zach Ertz all of a sudden, because that may be the thing that pushes that deal over the top to get it done if, in fact, he lands in Indianapolis, which is where I told you I feel like he's going to land all along. But we'll see what happens with that situation. Don't count the Bears out, even though I don't know if the Bears are as desperate as everyone assumes. In case you missed it, Alex Smith leaning towards returning somewhere. Now, I told you guys this already. I said, look, man, Alex is going to want to play. I said, I'm listening to Alex Smith talk at every turn. I listened to Alex Smith on 60 Minutes. I've heard Alex Smith on various podcast platforms. I heard Alex Smith on the NFL Honors Award Show. It didn't ever sound like a guy that was done with football. Never once did I say, hey, that guy's leaning towards retirement. Always sounded like a guy that felt like last year gave him a new lease on life in terms of an NFL career and that he wants to continue to play. The question now becomes, Is it going to be in Washington if, in fact, he does decide to play in 2021? And again, all signs point to him doing so. All signs point to him wanting to have an opportunity to play and start somewhere. Will it be in Washington? He's owed something like going towards $19 million next year if he stays in Washington. They can cut ties with him and save somewhere around $13.5, $14 million on the cap. It just makes too much sense for Washington to move on from Alex Smith. Look, if they really want him back and if he really wants to have a chance to compete in Washington, he'll restructure his deal. If they go to Alex and say, look, man, we can chop you off right here at the knees and get $14 million back, bro. Like, we don't have to do this. But we like you, and we want you to be here, and we want to give you a chance to compete for the starting job. Now, we're not going to give it to you. We got Taylor Heineke. We got Kyle Allen back. It's the same group from last year, same quarterback room from last year. But we feel really confident in those guys after seeing them play last year. They're going to get an opportunity, but if you want to be here, you're going to have to take significantly less. And a lot of the money that you will earn this year, if you get it, is going to be incentive laden, okay? It's going to be incentive laden, meaning you got to have X amount of starts. You got to throw for X amount of yards, X amount of touchdowns. We got to win X amount of games for you to hit these escalators and bonuses. If he really wants back, he won't have any problems with that. If he wants to have his cake and eat it too, he's going to have to indulge somewhere else. That's what it looks like. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping he ends up playing somewhere else, honestly speaking. But we'll see what happens. But he's leaning towards returning. Not a surprise if you've been listening to me or Alex Smith this entire offseason. In case you missed it, Raiders not interested in moving Derek Carr. I think we've talked about this already. But then they added this little piece to it. If you're not interested, then you're not interested. It would take a pretty big haul to get the Raiders to move off of Derek Carr. So, on one hand, they're not interested. But on the other hand, they're like, unless, hold on, wait, don't leave. Unless you're willing to do something crazy like give us 2 first-round picks. We talked about this already. Derek Carr is not worth 2 ones. Now, I've already said I like Derek Carr probably more than most. I think you can win in this league with Derek Carr. You got an above average. You don't even have to have an elite defense to win with Derek Carr. You got an above average defense. You can win right now with Derek Carr. You got an elite defense. You got a chance to win a Super Bowl with Derek Carr. So, all the people, Derek Carr stinks. Well, I beg to differ. And it's funny, I've talked about this a million times. Everyone always wants to push Derek Carr out of Vegas with this Raiders organization. Every opportunity they get, every offseason, Derek Carr is gone. They're going to trade him. John Gruden wants to get. What makes you think that John Gruden doesn't like Derek Carr and doesn't like what he's doing for this Raiders organization? And because Derek Carr is Derek Carr, they're never terrible enough to get the kind of pick that it's going to take to replace him. He's too good of a quarterback. If he's healthy and he's playing, they're going to win at least 6 or 7 games, minimum. That's on a bad season. Derek Carr's healthy and their defense was abhorrent last year. It was abhorrent. And they still were 6-3 and in position to make the postseason before they fell the hell apart down the stretch. They still went 8-8. So, Derek Carr is not going anywhere. No one's giving up 2 ones or anything close to that. Remotely close to that for Derek Carr. Mariota is the guy, though, that I believe can be had. We talked about that on the last podcast, that they re-signed Nathan Peterman. I think that John Gruden is looking at the situation and saying, man, we signed Marcus Mariota when nobody else wanted him to a 2-year deal, and we may be able to flip that into a 3rd-round pick. That's as high as it's going to get. Somebody's got to be really desperate. Because I told you, he's a day 3 pick for me. He's a day 3 pick. I'll give you a 4th rounder for Marcus Mariota right now. Right now. If you're Washington and you call up the Raiders and you say, I'll give you a 4th rounder for Mariota, and they're willing to take it, you do it. If I'm the Raiders, I'm trying to extract a day 2 pick from somebody. You're probably not getting anybody's 2. That's hard to fathom. Off of 1 game last year, him coming in relief and playing really well, it's hard for me to imagine you're getting a 2 for him. You might be able to squeeze a compensatory 3 out of somebody. You may be able to do that. Somebody gets a compensatory pick when they start handing those bad boys out. And you say, hey, I got a back end of the 3rd round compensatory 3 right here, man. I slide that your way for Marcus Mariota. Raiders may have to jump on that. That might be the closest you're going to get to a day 2 pick. But to me, he's worth a day 3 pick. 4th round pick. Middle of the draft. Middle round pick, and it's a 1-year rental. If you like what you see, you buy. You try and you buy. If you don't, it's a minimal investment. You gave up a mid-round pick. You're not paying a boatload of money to figure out if he's the guy or not. It's really a good situation for a team not sure about their quarterback situation. So, Raiders aren't moving Derek Carr. Can we stop that whole discussion? It's not happening because nobody's giving up what the Raiders are going to ask for if you really want to pry the 4 car away from them. In case you missed it, this one's a little bit surprising to me. Probably shouldn't be because I even said it myself. If you don't have a job, don't quit your old job. You better have a new job lined up, ready to go before you quit your old job. Jimmy G likely staying in San Francisco. The only way they move off of Jimmy G is if they can get their hands on Deshaun Watson. Makes a ton of sense from the standpoint of, hey, Jimmy G knows the system. He does all the things that we know we want in this system. Quick release, can get the football to guys and allow them to make plays. They went to the Super Bowl with Jimmy G, so they know he's capable of taking them where they need to go. We can all acknowledge, though, that they got to the Super Bowl off the strength of a dominant run game and defense. We can all acknowledge that. Jimmy wasn't terrible, but he wasn't the reason they got there. And you could argue Jimmy was the reason they lost the Super Bowl. So, I understand that Jimmy G is likely staying because who else are you going to trot out there? And that was my thing was Jimmy G's contract is easy for the 49ers to get out of. If they wanted to release him, they could release him right now and have minimal penalty doing so. Like they're in a position that if they wanted to trade him, they wanted to release him, they could. And it would not really impact them whatsoever. But what are you going to do? You're going to put in Nick Mullins? We saw that experiment last year. Didn't go very well. What are you going to do? Put in CJ Beathard? We saw the CJ Beathard experiment multiple years running now. He's good. He's not good. It looks exactly the same as Nick Mullins. He's good one week. He stinks the next. They got nothing. They got nothing if they get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. So they're saying we're better off with Jimmy than allowing Jimmy to walk and then having to find a new guy to replace him that doesn't know this offense, that's going to have to come in, learn the terminology, get comfortable, and catch up to where everybody else is. Because the 49ers believe they're ready to win right now. They're 2 seasons removed now. Well, 1 season really removed from just being the best team in the NFC. So they're saying, why can't we get back there? Get all our horses back, get the defense healthy again, make a couple of shrewd moves this offseason, whether it be via free agency, the draft, or both. Why can't we be back in the NFC driver's seat? We'll see. I don't know if Jimmy G's the guy to get you there or not. I'm not as big a Jimmy G hater as everyone else is. I don't think he's as bad as everybody says he is. I just know that he's not as good as I thought he was going to be when he got to San Francisco either. In case You missed it. Tyrell Williams, big free agent pickup for the Raiders 3 off seasons ago, to be cut by the Raiders this offseason will save them $11.5 million on the cap, which we know is going to go down this offseason. To what extent, we're not quite sure. But what a disappointing free agent signing this was for all parties involved, because Tyrell Williams, undrafted guy with the Chargers, plays ball's out of control. I talked about Phillip Rivers finding some 6'4", 6'5" guy to just launch it up into the air to. Tyrell Williams was that guy. You know, before there was another Williams in L.A. and before that San Diego with the Chargers, it was Tyrell Williams. Okay? And he parlayed that into a nice payday. But here's the thing. The Raiders brought him on board to be a number 2 receiver. Antonio Brown has the shenanigans 2 off seasons ago, and the Raiders have to release him. All of a sudden now, Tyrell Williams is being looked upon as the number 1 guy, and he's like, look, I didn't sign up for that shit, man. I didn't sign here to be anybody's number 1 wide receiver, okay? I can't beat the other team's best corner. I made a living in Los Angeles beating the other teams too. Like, what are you guys doing right now? Go find us a number 1 wide receiver, or I'm not going to maximize this deal you signed me to. And he was a disappointment that first year. Last year, he had like a torn labrum or something in camp, and he was going to try to play through it, and then he realized, I can't play through this shit. And he missed the entire season, and they're like, okay, enough of this shit. $11.5 million, we could use every penny of it. Let's move on from him. What I'm saying is, he's still young, still fast as shit, and he's still tall as hell. He could be a steal for someone in free agency. He's not trash. He didn't forget how to play football. He just needs to go somewhere where he's not the number 1 option. Hell, it'd be nice if he wasn't even the number 2 option. If he goes somewhere and he's the 3rd option, he'd be a dynamic 3rd option, because he can take the top off of a defense. He can make big plays, as we saw with the Chargers. He can still play football. He's not old. He's not decrepit. He can still play. He didn't miss last year with a torn ACL or Achilles. Wasn't a lower leg injury, or lower body injury, I should say. I think he'll be a really, really interesting free agent if the Raiders do decide to cut him, and it sounds like they've already made up their mind. So add him to the list of guys I'm intrigued by this offseason. And it shouldn't cost you a whole hell of a lot of money. He might be out for a 1-year prove-it deal. I'd have to look up his age, see where he is. He's probably somewhere in that 28, 29 department. I'd have to guess. Maybe he's no more than 30, but it's a young 30. You know, even if he's at that point. Be interesting to see what he decides to do this offseason. If it's a 1-year prove-it deal, does he sign a 2-year contract with a bunch of incentives, bonuses, and whatnot? Tyrell Williams will be interesting for me. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to our final segment of the show, garbage time. Before we do that, I do want to ask you guys to sub up to the LouieTeeNetwork if you haven't already done so. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Never know when I'm going live, like today, great example. And also, do me a favor, hit that like button if you haven't already done so. Over 230 of you out there, only 63 likes. Please hit that like button. Let's get that number up to over 100 before this podcast is done. So, J.J. Watt released by the Texans. We knew his time in Houston was coming to an end. We knew that was imminent. But we thought that this chapter of J.J. Watt's career was going to end in a trade, not a release. But he went to Texans management after they had been fielding calls on him for the last 2 weeks. He goes to Texans management And he says, don't trade me. I want to control where I go. I've given you blood, sweat, and tears for the better part of what feels like a decade now. All I'm asking is that you just give me a chance to pick my last destination. This will probably be it. Wherever I go next, I'll probably finish my career there. Let me pick that. Please. You owe that much to me. And they obliged. Now, some people will say, oh man, look at the Texans. It's a great gesture by the Texans. And it was. But come on now. We all know why they did this. You know, it was funny. I was on Twitter and socials, and everybody tried to pull the race card. Well, J.J. Watt asked for a release, and the Texans just outright release him, and Deshaun Watson wants out, and they won't get rid of him. What is that all about? I'm like, man, shut up. You come straight out of a comic book. These are not comparable situations. This is not apples to apples, okay? One's an aging veteran on the back end of his career. The other is a 25-year-old budding superstar going into the prime of his career, playing the most important position in all sports, not just football, sports. They're not the same. And I'll take it a step further. The reason the Texans released J.J. Watt is because they're looking for something positive to be said about them. This has nothing to do with J.J. Watt. I guarantee you, if Deshaun Watson and his situation were under control and there was no animosity between those two camps and he was ready to come back and work for the Texans next year, they would have flipped J.J. Watt for a second round pick or 2 twos or a 1. They would have flipped him. Even if he begged and pleaded, hey, just release me. No, can't do that. Can't do that, JJ. Sorry, man. Sorry. We love you, though. Really appreciate what you've done. Greatest Texan in franchise history. One day we'll bring you back and we'll retire 99. Can't let you walk away like that, though. We got to get something for you, bro. Sorry. But because they've got all this negative press coming their way, Texas can't get anything right. They saw this as an opportunity to try and get some goodwill, to earn up a little bit of good rapport. Just a little bit of good juju, man. They're like, hey, maybe we put a little good something back into the atmosphere, we'll get something out. We could trade him. Damn, look, everybody knows we could use the draft capital. We could definitely use the draft capital by us releasing him. We're going to free up some cap space, so we'll take care of one of our issues of no cap space. We could definitely flip him and get some more draft capital. We all know we could use it. But we're not going to do that because we're good guys. We're likable guys. And we want to do right by JJ. I hear you, but I know what this is about. This is really about you trying to save face. And whatever happens, I'm happy for JJ Watt. Because at the end of the day, he's the biggest winner here, not the Texans. They stink, and they're not going to be good for a very long time. Whether Deshaun Watson comes back or he doesn't, they're going to stink. They're a mess right now, and they can't get out of their own way. And there's nothing worse than looking at a situation, looking at an organization, and seeing it for what it is, a sinking ship, and knowing that it's sinking because of bad ownership, and there isn't anything anybody else can do about it. Not a single player, not any of the fans. Nothing can be done. The Texans are a poorly run organization right now. They're in over their heads. Cal McNair, Jack Easterby, all of those guys are in way over their heads. Nick Caserio doesn't know what the hell he's walking into. He just knows, look, this is one of 32 NFL GM positions. They don't come open very often. I've got a chance to be my own guy. I'm going to take it. Might have been career suicide, but I'm going to take it. Because he could get fired in 3 years because they could go 3-13, 2-14, and 2-14. And they're going to be looking at Nick and saying, what the hell, dude? Well, he's like, hey, I thought I was getting Deshaun Watson. Because even if you trade him, you're not going to be able to replace him. We've already talked about that. There is No way. It's damn near impossible to trade a superstar and get equal value for him. Damn near impossible in any sport. Try as hard as you may. Damn near impossible. Especially the quarterback position. So, it's interesting that Watt gets released and everybody's like, oh man, the Texans. What a gesture. And Watt quickly jumped on socials and thanked the Texans for allowing him to be released, because they could have traded him, and he knows it. And he stated as much, like, hey, I asked for this. And they didn't have to do it, but they did. I want to talk about the other end of this thing now. Okay, so he's been released. The Texans did it for their own reasons. Where's he going to end up? I quickly tweeted out, man, this feels like he's trying to make a beeline for Pittsburgh to join up with his brother. Sure damn feels like it. I know the Steelers' cap situation isn't the best. They're going to do something with Roethlisberger. They got to restructure Roethlisberger. They just had Pouncey retire. That's got to free up some money. I don't know how much. That's got to free some stuff up. Ben's going to restructure. He's got to restructure. They're crippled by $41 million. He's going to restructure. I don't know if he's going to end up in Pittsburgh or not, but that sounds logical to me. They've already got a stacked defensive line, though. But if you add him to the mix, they become pretty lethal up front. Anyway, Green Bay, everybody said, hey, what about going home? He's a Wisconsin kid. There's no place like home. He wants to go to a Super Bowl contender. He's dying to play somewhere where they've got a chance to win. So it's not going to be, it's funny because every time somebody gets released with a name, Washington fans, hey, what do you think about this guy? And I'm like, he's not coming here. Are you crazy? He wants to win, and he wants to win now. Speaking of which, did you hear what Matthew Stafford had to say? I feel like we've talked way too much about Matthew Stafford. Outside of him being the best loser in the NFL, we've talked way too much about him because of the trade. But I did find it interesting that he said, hey, look, the lot's been made about where I was willing to go and not willing to go. And he said, look, it wasn't just New England. I'm not going to tell you guys what that list contained and was comprised of, but there was a short list of teams that I was like, look, don't trade me there. I'm trying to win. And when guys get to that point of their career, like a Stafford and like a J.J. Watt, you ain't trying to go to a team that's trying to figure shit out. You're trying to go somewhere where if I go there, I might be the missing piece to put them over the top. I may be the guy that gets them over the hump. The Rams made it to the divisional round last year. Stafford's mind, he's saying, I'm better than Jared Goff. I come in here, I elevate them to the Super Bowl. We thought the same thing about Kirk Cousins when he went to Minnesota. Didn't quite work out that way, but that's the logic. I'm better than Case Keenum, so they went to the NFC Championship game and got romped. I should be able to get him over the top. Didn't quite work out that way. Wasn't all his fault. Defense regressed significantly every year that he's gotten there. Since he's been there, the defense has walked it back a step every year since Kirk got to Minnesota. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for Kirk. No, you don't want to hear that shit. I said all of that to say J.J. Watt doesn't want to go to Washington. Maybe he'll consider Tennessee, but I don't know if he looks at the Titans and says, hey, they're a J.J. Watt away from turning it around and winning a Super Bowl. I don't know if he says that about Tennessee. There are a lot of teams on that list that I'm thinking he's looking at and he's saying, I'm not going there. Which is why he's like, don't trade me, let me pick. I think that list looks something like Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Green Bay. I think that list looks something like that. One of these teams that you look at and you say, Tampa Bay, don't forget about the Buccaneers. I threw them out as a team that could easily say, Ndamukong Suh, paid him what, 11, 12, 13 million dollars for 1 year of service last year just to bring him back. He's a free agent. All right, let Suh walk. Let's pick up JJ. I can see that happening. Getting him as a rental. But I think Watt is interested in signing somewhere to finish up his career. Not necessarily a 1 year rental. He could say, hey, Brady's going to be here one more year, at least one more year in Tampa. Why not? Why not go join him in Tampa for this 1 year? See if they can't run it back in Tampa Bay. See if I can't be a part of them running it back in Tampa Bay and maybe get me a ring of my own. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think it's going to happen, but you can't discount it. Seattle's another place that I think he might be interested in. And remember, he's already a free agent now. The Texans no longer have his rights. His contract is no longer tied to the Texans. So he doesn't have to wait until March and the start of the new league year to sign somewhere. Teams are courting him right now as we speak. They're on the phone with his agent trying to figure out what he's looking for in his next destination. So we'll know where J.J. Watt is going to play his next football at, probably in the next few weeks. I think this gets done before the start of the new league year. So I wouldn't be shocked if we found out that J.J. Watt signed a 3-year, $45 million deal to play here or there. That wouldn't shock me if we found that out in a week and a half from now. So really interesting stuff there. Anyway, I do have a couple super chats. Both of them from Donald Gray. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Donald Gray. Greatly appreciate you. My man Donald Gray writes, been listening a while now, Lou. First time super chatting. Just wanted to say thank you. Hail. Really appreciate you, Donald. Really, truly do. And hopefully we'll be chopping it up a lot more in the near future. So with that said, then go ahead and glide to the side and allow you guys to get back to your regularly scheduled programming. Didn't mean to trouble you on this Monday evening, but I was dragging ass. I'm not going to lie. I got back from my mini vacay late last night and was a little tired. So it took me a while to get up and kick myself in the pants and get back going. But I'm back like cooked crack now. So here we are. I do want to ask you guys one final time to subscribe to Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Also, hit that like button so you can continue to support the Louie T Network. All right. Just hit 100 likes. I really appreciate y'all, but it's still 220 of you out there. Let's get it to 120, 150 if we can even. Anyway, I really do appreciate y'all. Got another super chat. This one is from D. John Bell. Thank you for the super chat. It says, when are you doing a Washington Report live? It will be on Thursday. I will put out a couple of Washington videos, though, as a couple of things have transpired, including Washington hiring another guy into their front office, the son of Bill Polian, now a member of Washington's scouting department, as their head of pro personnel. So I'll probably put out a video about that at some point today or tomorrow, as well as some other things that I want to kind of put out there in preparation for Thursday's show, where we'll start to take a look at the defensive side of the football in free agency and what I think might transpire there and some positions that we may be targeting on the defensive side of the football. So with that said, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me on today's show. Be sure to join me on Wednesday. We'll be back for the Louie T Network podcast on Wednesday, and I will open the floor to you all for social media maneuvers. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. on the Louie T Network podcast. See you guys on Wednesday. Have a good one.